kids. This is it. Welcome back to another episode of I Am I. My name is Joshua Ansley. I don't mean this is it like this is the last episode or anything like that. So, settle down, because I know there's millions of you that would be very disappointed if that were the case. What I mean is that this is it. This is the moment right now, exactly as it is, and we are exactly as we are. Right? Now I know that may seem like a real commonsensical kind of thing, but what I mean by that is that we are absolutely perfectly designed exactly as we are now to move forward for our maximum amount of growth. Okay? Now again, that might seem really commonsensical, but it's very easy to want things to be another way, or want ourselves to be another way, or wait for things externally to line up in order for us to take action, or in order for us to be okay, which are two separate things. So I want to talk about, when I say this is it, in this moment, first what we're talking about is us being okay. Right? Us being in a place of whatever that means to you. So if you want it to be happiness, if you want to search for happiness, right, which is still, like I said a couple weeks ago, a limited thing, because happiness is just an emotion, which is just a small part of who we are. Right? It's not who we are. So this space that I'm talking about, the space of the self, let's say, if you go with the Eastern philosophical understanding, is that space of the self is something that is outside of your mind and your emotions. Right? So that your mind and your emotions are external things. So instead of waiting for the external world to be a certain way in order for you to be okay, that includes your thoughts and your emotions, just recognize that you already are. Even if you don't feel it, this is not about a feeling. This is not diminished feelings. It doesn't say that feelings don't exist or that they're not real or they're not important or valid. It's understanding that, that the way you feel is not who you are. And it is not the totality of reality, right? It is a small little portion of it. And from that space outside of your emotions, now you can actually work in and understand your emotions. And because what happens is a lot of the issues that I see that have come up in my life is because it's out of resistance. It's out of resistance of a place of not accepting myself exactly as I am, not accepting the world exactly as it is, right? So it's not accepting the darker shadows within myself. This idea that I need to or want to be a light worker and a good being, bringing goodness and life and light into the world, which is a beautiful thing. It's not to deny that. But if my identity is wrapped up in that, right, and that what I think is right. See, this is a space that is getting outside of our own opinions of what we think right and wrong to be, and that's why I always talk about it not being stuck in right and wrong. Because even if we take an action, that can be separate from our concept of right and wrong, and maybe in a good way or maybe in a bad way, if you want to go with the good and bad, right? But this space is outside of that entirely. So this space is a freedom from the way we feel, the way we think it should be. Because until you've really had an experience where maybe what you think was doing best, when you found out that really maybe it wasn't, and the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And that's something that is just an understanding on a deeper level that we can still have good intentions, we can still move forward in the world, but when we get outside of even our own well-being and talking about us being okay, right, within ourselves, so that external being the emotions and the thoughts and the things like that, then if you take it to the real externals, really outside of us entirely, outside of this mechanism, and out into the world, not waiting for the world to be okay in order for us to be okay, right? And that's, again, coming to this space of us being okay. This is all working from that space. So if you're waiting for the world to line up in order for you to be okay, you're definitely fucked. But if you're even waiting for your inner being to line up and be good, because a lot of it is we don't even recognize that we are judging ourselves and expecting ourselves to be a certain way. Right? And that inner struggle comes from us not being able to accept the deeper levels of ourselves that we don't think are okay or good. So if we live in this world of dichotomy, this world of duality of good and bad, right and wrong, then we're never going to really be able to accept ourselves for those deeper levels, that deeper darkness, those shadows within ourselves. And the more we can move into accepting that space and understanding that as a human being, as human nature, outside of your identity and your ego identity, that in that space of getting into a deeper sense of self, that you can accept those darknesses, right? And accept all that shitty crap about us, right? When we embrace that within ourselves, and it doesn't mean we embrace that and let that grow, but maybe by acceptance and love of that, that's where it dissipates. Instead of the resistance, and it keeps fighting because it just needs to move through. It just needs to pass through. But we don't want to recognize that we could actually be that much of a shitbag or a douchebag, you know, or be that vicious or that angry or that selfish or that, you know, we don't want to be angry. We don't want to have these negative emotions, and they hurt, and we're afraid of them. We're afraid of like the true power and the potential of that fucking rage that we might have and what we might do, because we would like, no, keep that down. Well, maybe we learn to let it pass through from a space of not being connected to the emotions and not identifying as those emotions that don't define you. Not your successes, not your failures, none of that defines you. Right? If you get down to a space beyond that, then you can recognize that this is it. That this is what you have to deal with. Because then that might be shifting your world. You're living unconsciously because you're not even conscious that you don't want to do this. But you don't want to look at those dark spaces because it causes so much anxiety and pain and all this kind of stuff, which is all just part of the emotions. It's all part of the thoughts. It's all part of that duality. Right? From a space beyond that, then we can look at all of that. We can sift through it, let it go, and then we become able to manage it. We become able to embrace it, and then we become able to accept it in others. We can accept how fucked up this world is. But that doesn't mean that we don't do anything about it then either. That doesn't mean that we're stuck. Then, from that space, that's when we then begin to take action. That's when we begin to take action in the world. So that it doesn't mean, so that if we're an activist or somebody doing something, it doesn't have to be from a space of absolute enraged anger. Hey, this is how to get yourself into a better understanding. We talk about, that all selfless deeds and all good deeds are inherently selfish. And that's okay. It's okay that they are. But you can actually make that distinction of why you're operating the way you do. Right? And why you are actually, and if you are an activist and out there in the world, if it's coming from that enraged place, then it's really just coming from your own pain and suffering and a desire to relieve your pain and suffering and your inability to accept the world as it is. And really it's just a reflection of you and your inability to accept you as you are. Maybe, just a possibility. I can't tell you about yourself. I can only tell you about my experience and what I've seen. And not thinking that I know what is best. So it's a place outside of my opinions. That doesn't mean that my opinion is not maybe the best, doesn't align with what might be best, but they're not enmeshed anymore. So that I can recognize when I have to go against and recognize that my opinions are something that are hindering me. It's like when you're doing any sort of altruistic work or anything like that, and you go into a space where maybe the help is not wanted, and maybe you think in your Western, if you are Western as watching this idea, and you don't even recognize how much you're affected by the culture that you were born and raised in, even if you are a free thinker and an open thinker, how much that has really shaped the way you think the world should be in some way. And the shoulds are what lead to shame. So if we can step out of all that and recognize that this is it, right now, this moment, exactly as you are, exactly as your body is, exactly as your thoughts are, exactly as your emotions are, all the crap of it, all the shadows, all the darkness that is also inherently present in the world. When you learn to accept that, from there, it is not a place of resignation, it is not a place I forgot what word I'm looking for. It's not a place of resignation. It's from that space, then we take action from there. Then we move forward from there. It is a place of awareness. It is a place of not hiding anything, not hiding from anything within ourselves, embracing all of it, the creator, the maintainer, and the destroyer within all of us, and that is inherent in the world. And then we can be more accepting as we move out into the world and take action from an activist standpoint, but with a sense of ease from within ourselves. And then it becomes selfless action. Amen. All right, so this is it. This is your moment, whatever it is, whatever project it is maybe that you're working on, right? Or that you haven't stepped into because you might be waiting for the rest of the world to line up for it to be okay, for it to be right. And there is a discernment at times to figure out what point to take what action. But 99% of the time, it's really about that we're thinking that everything else is going to have to line up for it to be okay, for us to take action. But it's actually through stepping into this moment, into the mess of it. Let it be messy and sloppy and ugly and dirty and this absolute just, mess. then when we step into that, we start to discover things. We start to see how that, through that inaction, not that through inaction, but through action, in action, right? We start to discover and move through things, and it starts to evolve into something, not waiting for this, everything to line up. This moment right now. In Lakesha Lakin, I am you, you are me. Namaste. What? Too much?